Hello, 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 hello. So I just got done watching the Menendez brothers documentary on Netflix, and I kind of wanted to discuss it as a late night chat. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Hello, Miss Polk. Congratulations for what? Hey, CL. Hey, Kay. How are y'all? Hey, Java. I watched all episodes except the last one. So I'm not talking about the I'm not talking about the Ryan Murphy. I haven't watched that. I'm talking about the documentary, the real stuff. I haven't watched the Ryan. I'm kind of softly boycotting Ryan Murphy. Very softly. So I haven't really watched any of his stuff since Hollywood. I think I think that's yeah. So let me see. So as I was growing up as a 40 something year old woman, 40 something year old millennial, there were just cases that were like huge when I was growing up. So this one being one of them, OJ Simpson being one of them, um, the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff being one of them, Lorena Bobbitt cutting her trade ding ding off was a big one. The Clinton scandal and the Clinton impeachment was a big one. It was a bunch of big ass cases in the 90s that were like cultural phenomenons. The the Lacey Peterson, is it Lacey Peterson murder? Is her name Lacey Peterson? The one that husband had killed her wife, killed his wife, and was pretending to not have killed her. Then they found out that he did, so it was all this hoopla that he was cheating on his wife and all this kind of stuff. Do y'all remember that? Is it Lacey Peterson? Is that her name? John Benet Ramsey, yes, the little girl disappearing. We don't know if her parents did it. We don't know. We don't know what's going on with the little girl. Yeah, it was a bunch of cases in the 90s that was like national phenomenon. Um, one of the reasons why I think that is because television became way more lucrative in the 90s compared to other decades. I feel like 90s television, even when you see in other genres like football and um just it just for some reason the 90s just kind of like when it comes to basketball, when it comes to sports, when it comes to anything that deal with television, like 90s were like a boom in it being a economy in a way that it wasn't in previous decades. Not saying that television wasn't big or, you know, in some instances, but it just took a whole different turn in the 90s to me. Do y'all agree? Just 90s, it just when we think about MTV, Music Awards kind of blowing up, when we think about um the spectacle of like the Grammys and the Oscars starting to be a boom. This is why the Met Gala kind of got bigger and became what it is today. This is a time when these things started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it just felt like the spectacle of television started to be, it just started to be different, just way more bigger than normal. And so reality TV also started to be a boom. So this is when we have the real world. This is when we have like Teen Summit and Court TV. Like Court TV, this is one of the first cases, the Menendez case is one of the first cases that we literally can be on TV watching the case go on. Simple Life, yes. We can literally watch this case go on, like what's happening in the courtroom, testimonies, da 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 da. Court TV this was like one of their first cases live, and so it was just a quite interesting time. And as a kid, now mind you, this is coming during the time that I am going through one of the most tumultuous times of my life. Like this is like 94. I'm right at the beginning of my transition. I am going into like group homes. My mother is, spiraling in her addiction. This is just really like a heavy ass time. So me going through these kind of emotional hard times and then seeing these two white rich boys done killed their parents. I'm coming into it not knowing the details of it, but like, oh, you rich white boys coming in like ungrateful. Like you got rich parents and you coming in ungrateful. So as a kid, I'm coming into the case like that. You see what I'm saying? Without knowing any of the details. It just feels like, oh, y'all killed your parents. That's unheard of. Y'all rich and in Beverly Hills and killing your parents, and I'm over here struggling with a poor addict mom. So when I'm hearing about the case, that's what I'm thinking of as a teenager. Until I start getting into the details of the first trial. So the first trial, they lay out that it's not a question on whether or not they killed their parents. That was always, yes, they confessed to doing it. What the question was it first degree murder or was it manslaughter? Was it in self defense or imperfect self defense or malicious? That was the it was the degree of the murder that was really being was really being kind of argued. That was the crux of the case. um Self-defense is when you think that you are in danger and you act to protect yourself. That's self-defense. Imperfect self-defense is when you are you really believe that you are in danger, like you really believe it, but a person outside of the situation can look at it and reasonably say you actually weren't. Now, you probably believed you were in danger, but based on whatever circumstances, but you actually weren't in danger. And that's an imperfect self-defense. Still can be manslaughter, but that's the difference in legally, the difference between self-defense and imperfect self-defense. And then there's just regular murder where you maliciously kill somebody. So those were the things that were in question during this case. And so um one's own, what do you mean one's own? I don't know what that means. Um so in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, so this isn't about when I was younger, I was like, oh, this is some people being molested by their parents. Like, and when I was younger, I thought that it was all of them. Like, I thought it was the mom and the dad. I didn't think it was just the dad. I thought it because I really was kind of not paying attention totally. And that's another thing about some of these big old cases, because they were happening when I was young, I didn't have the adult context. And so I wasn't even thinking about it deeply. I was just kind of thinking like, oh, these are some details that I know about it because I either hear somebody talking about it or I'm watching a show, watching people talk about it on the news, on, just different stuff like that. And so, but now that I can go back and look, I can see hear some of the more details around the case that I didn't even know, because I thought that both of the parents were molesting the kids, but it was actually just the daddy, and the mom knew about it and she didn't do nothing to fix it. And so when I was younger, I was like, oh, but if they were molesting them, then shit, why are they going to jail for killing their molesters? It was always kind of like that in question for me, where I was like, oh, you should be able to wear your molesters out. So why are we freaking why are they getting in trouble for, killing their molesters? That's what it felt like to me. Um, but now that I watch this documentary, I see that it was really what I just described, the degree of how the murder went on, and and um and and just the jury, because they went through two trials. One trial where they got tons of evidence, tons of people literally testifying that yes, they have been saying that the kid that their dad was molesting them since they were 8 years old, and nobody was doing anything about it. So nothing was. Hey, California, um, nobody was doing anything about it. So you get what I'm saying? People were already saying, hey, they weren't lying, they were telling the truth. And so it wasn't about, people knew what was going on, but they weren't doing anything. And especially during the time, one of the elements that they talked about on the documentary, during the time, we hadn't had this Me Too movement and this kind of cultural reckoning around sexual abuse. They didn't have this kind of, we hadn't had that like Me Too movement and all these cases where we were talking about abuse. We hadn't had the amazing Oprah Winfrey episode on her show where she had all those men in the episode. That was a watershed moment for the culture, because she had all these men holding up pictures of when they got molested, how old they were when they got molested. And the whole show was about men who had been sexually molested. And so we hadn't had these moments yet in the 90s. So people weren't taking, um, um, meant to say that if y'all don't know, anyone on Paris called Parasite. Thank you. Um, in the we just didn't have this kind of reckoning that had happened around anybody like rape or molestation. If you remember, this happens. We just started having the sexual harassment conversation. 3 or 4 years before this is when Anita Hill was testifying against our now crazy coon, um, Clarence Thomas, becoming Supreme Court Justice. And so because of that, because of that, it we just didn't have this kind of conversation. And so they weren't taking boys being molested seriously at the time enough around this, particularly around this particular case, but in the cultural consciousness. And so they talked about how when the jury was deliberating on the verdict, that it was split by gender. The men were like murder, 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 murder. But the women was like, hold up, they got molested. And there was some nuances that they understood as women that, yo, they were being molested. What do you mean? Why wouldn't they feel like unsafe and harmed if they've been molested since they were young and this is their way out? Like, come on. Like, we gotta consider that. And it was gender, it was specifically, they were talking about it on a documentary where it was all women saying, no, it should be manslaughter. And all the men was like, no, it should be murder. So um the mother was complacent. I think it was the attorney's idea. She wanted to win at all costs. Well, this is another element that I wanted to talk about. I'll talk about that later. I have it in my notes. I'll talk about later. Let me bring back to this the idea of winning at all costs. Um, Save that. I'm gonna come back to that. So I thought it was quite interesting that just how people were responding to the act of, a father molesting his kids, and then how we thought about power. Like, now, because we have seen the fall of so many powerful men, um we know how we are learning more and more how they get down. Not really that we didn't know powerful men didn't do crazy stuff, but so many more powerful men are being taken down in this era. So for me, in my brain, this is how I think about um in this moment with their dad. This dad is a powerful movie Hollywood executive, movie executive living in Beverly Hills, coming from this family, this big family. He's successful. Uh, we're learning that he's abusing his power. Horrible. To do it to your own babies, though. I mean, like, are we surprised by that? I- We're not monsters, so we're gonna be like, no, you don't molest. We're not molesters, so we're not ever gonna do that. But are we, like, are we surprised by that? Like, statistically, people who are molested by their parents or somebody in the family, but a lot of times by their parents, by people that's close to them. It's not some stranger. It's somebody in their vicinity, usually their parents. So is that really, like, shocking? It's disgusting. Yeah. But that's pretty, like, common. Like, when you find somebody, you have to, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's really, really high. High likely that if somebody is being, in the same way, like, if you find somebody murdered, it's really high statistically that it's their partner. But when you find children who get molested, it is really, really high that it is their somebody around them or their parent, one of the two. So for me, I don't know. It just feels like this is just one of those moments before we kind of had this reckoning that somebody was using their power. When we think about Mary Kay Letourneau, y'all know who Mary Kay Letourneau is? Mary Kay Letourneau is the teacher who was molesting um the little, was he a fifth grader or a teenager? He was a teenager. I don't know. I can't remember how old he was, but she was a white woman teacher who was having sex with her student. She went to prison for it. She got pregnant, went to prison for it, and then when she got out of jail, she ended up marrying that boy because he was grown now. So they end up being together and having more kids. Wild story. But when you get into the story of get into her story, when you get into her story, you get into her. She has a senator father. Her father is a senator, and they go. You get into the details of her own father molesting her, and so of course, not of course, because every person who is abused or molested doesn't go on to molest other people, but it's a good, you understand that, yo, she's not gonna have any sexual boundaries as soon as she come and become this teacher. And so we learn that behind this facade, this facade of power and upstanding family values, da 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 da, that senators have, you have this powerful man being, kind of the typical taking advantage of his power. And so that's one element, but we see this commonly. We see this so commonly. Like we see this with the Nation of Islam, with Elijah Muhammad. When we talk about him having this power and being the leader of the Nation of Islam, and then he's impregnating the teenagers, and people are finding out about it, and he is kicking the impregnated teenagers out of the mosque and out of the community. And then we get, Malcolm X finding out about it and kind of like, what? This is corny and whack. We see this all the time, these men in power um doing this kind of crazy ass shit. So for us to learn about it now, for us to learn about something happening now is kind of almost like a not a shocking thing, because we have seen this so many times for decades, decades. So it's kind of not a gag that this movie executive was fucking molesting his kids and fear mongering them, um and kind of using his power to be like, yo, you can't do nothing about it. um But the question wasn't not whether they did it or not. It was why they did it. It wasn't whether they confessed, they did it. It wasn't them not doing it. And and I feel like calling Lyle a mastermind is, I feel like that language is very, really? It's like a mastermind. Like he shot them with shotgun, like shotguns. There was no thought behind and and definitely if it was any kind of mind behind it, it definitely wasn't a master. Like it was pretty. If it didn't happen in Beverly Hills, they would have gotten arrested way faster. Yeah, they're not the brightest. They're not the brightest. I wouldn't say that they're masterminds. Lyle was the aggressive because he was the most aggressive, like the one who did the killing because he was protecting his brother, because he was protecting his brother. Um, but some some like masterful scheme, I don't think that that was I wouldn't call that a mastermind. That makes me feel like, oh, I was sitting over here planning everything out and da 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 da. Da." No, that doesn't. They never gave that. What's also what it also points out to me in regards to um like the attorney winning at all costs. So there is an intersection. There's a flaw in the justice system. It's tons of flaws in the justice system, but what this case really points at to me is this flaw in the justice system, because you got people who are judging this, and I don't know if there's a possible way to fix this, but there are people who are judging this who are human. And so, because they're human and humans are naturally imperfect, and their their egos and their angers and their pride can get in the way of a just decision. So, for example, Ray earlier said, I think it was the attorney's idea, she wanted to win at all costs. All attorneys want to win. Not necessarily at all costs, but all attorneys want to win. And so them wanting to win can skew them into bias. Like it just it's just natural for it to skew them into bias. For example, in the documentary, the very first trial against the Menendez brothers, the state attorney, the district attorney, the woman in this documentary, she was such a bitch. She was such a bitch because she was like, even though the second trial they won, the first trial that she did, she was like, I technically won, but I didn't really win. Like it was like, because of the mistrial, I didn't really win. And then they go on to get the case. Somebody else tried the case and the second case, and they won. So it's a win, but it's not a win for me. And so in that moment, then she goes into later on, they talk about this resurgence of sympathy for the Menendez brothers based on TikTok and da 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 da. And in the moment, she says, and for you TikTokers, um, the facts of the case is they killed their parents and blah 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 blah. And I got guns in my house, so don't think you're gonna come up in here. And in my brain, I was like, bitch, what are you talking about? Ain't nobody trying to come up in your fucking house over no Menendez brothers. What are you talking about? Like her ego and pride, because she lost the case because of the nuance of why, it makes you biased. You didn't even consider that these little boys was these not they weren't little boys, they were young adults. These young adults, but they had been molested since they was little boys. These young adults were being harmed. And so you weren't considering that in the motivations. And so they're laying out the other people laid out um honest evidence to that point. And so you can't just sit there and be like, oh, it was murder, 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 first degree murder, because the nuance of that is what makes it different. And so yes, you want to win, But if you want it to be a fair justice, you should want them to get you should want them to get manslaughter. Cause it's nobody. Y'all not saying that y'all don't believe them. Y'all not saying that y'all don't believe that they was molested. So what's the what's the justice in getting a murder charge just for you to win? That intersection of you just wanting to win and that ego and real justice, that don't always align. And even in the second trial, because it was embarrassing to the judge that it didn't get a verdict, it went on a mistrial, so they had to retrial again. He literally, he literally forced them. He literally forced them to not include the evidence of them being molested. So if you take that out of the equation, you take their motivation out. When the evidence shows that that was a part of the motivation. And so if you take that evidence out, then all you have is I killed my parents. So you're not even giving the motivation for the degree of what they were being charged with. So you're not, so it's either they didn't do nothing or they committed murder. There's no nuances of the degree of what happened. And that wasn't fair to them. I totally agree with the TikToker generation where it wasn't fair. Like if the facts was laid out that they were being molested by their parents. So if they were being molested by their parents and they were feeling like they were being harmed, honey, it's not saying that they don't get any consequences because you don't kill your parents just because the fuck you don't take the law into your own hands. There's some nuance to that. Whether or not I agree as a person, but from a legal standpoint, you don't do that. Um, and so because of that, it's unfair to them as a person on trial, as a defendant. It's unfair to them to not include those elements of their story. Totally unfair. Totally unfair and totally unjust. And your ego and you being embarrassed about the first trial forcing you to take all of take those evidence elements out of the trial because you're embarrassed, because you don't want this to go to another mistrial or blah, 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 blah. That's where that human element where you're letting your pride and your ego get in the way of a just decision. Because this wasn't a case about whether or not they did it or not. They did it. They admitted to doing it. It was the degree of what they did. Was it malicious? Was it self-defense? All that kind of stuff. And so for me, it just feels like I feel like the mother was abuser. She admitted that she knew about it. If you knew your children are being molested and you're not doing nothing to stop it, you are complacent and you are abuser. And so blow her head off, wear her out. Period. To me. Like she literally admitted that she knew about it to other people. Yeah, I don't believe that that she just because she wasn't touching them, that she wasn't complacent. If she knew about it and was letting it go on, she's just as culpable. Yeah, I'm not somebody that give people just because you wasn't doing the do. Yeah, but I believe them. You don't have to believe them, but I believe them. I believe what they were saying. I believe in their response. I believe in the people who were around, who had no reason to lie, who they had that they had confessed that their father was molesting them. I believe them. I don't think that they were lying. I don't think that that was their and then now in tapes and that's another element of the story. There are tapes before this era but after they've already convicted where people they're talking to people, the trial is over and they're still their story hasn't changed. There's other elements to it that still align with what they said. So and with both of them, and they have been separated for 20 years and they're saying the same thing. So it's not like, yeah, it's nothing about it that I don't believe. I think that they were being molested by their father. It was just how they're talking as 50 something year old adults. Well, not 50, I don't know how they are, but they older men now and they haven't been around each other because they was in separate prisons. Now they're in the same prison, but they haven't, they in separate prisons and they're giving the same exact story. They're saying their reflections of it, like, yeah, this is the first time my brother apologized to me. Because he also, which he didn't have to say, he also was saying, like, because I was molested by my father, me and my brother was messing around. I was messing around with my brother. And then he's like, yeah, that was the first time he ever apologized to me about that. So it was just it's no reason for me personally to believe that they were lying about that. Or really about anything. They confessed about it. They confessed about the murder. They just telling you why it was going on. Yeah. Yeah, I think we are looking at we look at abuse differently nowadays. What part of it was hard for you to believe? But what part of it do you not believe? Not whether or not it was gruesome. They're killing people. Killing is gruesome. I don't know about more gruesome. He shot the dad and the mom with a shotgun. But what part is unbelievable? The boys had other things going on, chemical use party. Yeah, they were early. Yeah, I don't what's unbelievable about it? I'm trying to grasp The nuance was unbelievable. They were rich young adults in Beverly Hills. I don't know if you know people from that kind of culture, but they all was getting high. If you talk to anybody from that era, they was getting high, having partying, cocaine, and da 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 da. That's pretty normal because they have access to privilege. They're gonna be in those kind of spaces where they are partying and doing all that kind of stuff. I don't know what that means. They were pretty mature for abuse that year. I don't know what that means. They were young. Young people party and get drunk. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty normal. Especially people who have access to like money and things. It feels pretty normal. Hmm. But what makes you not believe them? Like what was there has to what was the nuance of you not believing their motivations? Because they weren't saying I didn't kill them. They were saying I killed them. But they gave you a reason. What was your reason? What do you think the reason was? They were just druggies that want to kill their parents? Like what do you think their reasons were? If the reason they gave you wasn't believable, what do you think the reason? I don't think the motivation was money. I think they had no freedom. Hmm. Well, if they going partying and having chemical parties, they sure had a lot of freedom. The 90s weren't so sympathetic to believe everyone's story, larger hurdles to prove things outside of the normal. Hmm. Diamond, what do you think of the narrative that they just wanted their parents' money? I feel like if they wanted their parents' money, it would have been a more covered up murder. Like they wouldn't have called the police. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just there, it would have been a more I don't think they were very smart in the sense of that. So I don't think that I just don't think that that was the case. I think even a dumb person would have tried to cover it up in a way that would made it seem like that you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about getting rid of the bodies, but no. They did shit that scary people do. That people who kill somebody in the moment and then oh, what are we going to do? They didn't they didn't do the cover up stuff that I think a person would if they were planning to kill the murder. I mean, planning to kill their parents. You see what I'm saying? Any other case where somebody is planning to kill their parents, there is a we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna hide the body. We're gonna, you know what I'm saying? This is you don't choose to shotgun your fucking parents. A Mossberg shotgun, not some small gun. While they, you know what I'm saying? That could be siloed. You ain't even go find a silencer. You know what I'm saying? You got a big shotgun that just sprays shit. That doesn't feel um yeah, that doesn't feel weird. That doesn't feel that doesn't feel weird. That doesn't that doesn't feel like somebody planning to get their parents' money. That just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't it's not logical. I don't driving around in the flashy cars, spending the wealth they inherited. That happened after. That happened after when they were all doing the when even the police hadn't done what they were supposed to do to get them arrested. There was a lot of failures in the police department. They had fucking powder residue on their hands that they didn't even check. So, yeah, I think that would be kind of normal for rich kids to who parents are not there anymore and they have access to money and no barriers at all. I think that would be kind of normal. Um, I believe them. They just made dumb decisions that made them less sympathetic to the public. They talked about that too, how the OJ Simpson trial and OJ getting off made the public less sympathetic to them. Before that, it was a whole different story. People reacting differently to trauma inflicted on them or imposed on them. I don't think this disproves or muddles up their claims of abuse. Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. Would have been so messy. I hear you. Lyle was abusing Eric to me. That was the sex abuse. So, yeah, but that didn't have to come out. Like, if this, what doesn't make sense in that story, it's not, I'm not saying that that's not true. They admitted that. Um, is if that was a factor in the parent, whether or not the motivation of killing the parents was real, they would have kept that. Like, they didn't need to talk about that. If Eric and Lyle are in cahoots together and they're making up this story to get off, why does Eric, even to this day, we're talking about after the case, why does Eric have to admit that my brother molested me too, when they could have just left it at the father without even mentioning that? And then why is Eric saying that apology meant something to me? Years later, this is not during the trial. This is years later saying that was the first time that he apologized about what he did when his a part about abusing me. So they're not lying about I didn't abuse him. They said it. They talked about it. They talked about it openly. They're telling you their story. So why is that it doesn't make sense for Eric, who is the abused person, to even for them, if they're in cahoots, to even talk about that. If they're trying to get off and blame it on their parents, there is no point in even bringing that. If they're the masterminds, if they're the smart covering up and just doing this to win their case, there's no point in even bringing that element of the story up. Do you see what I'm saying? They didn't even need to include that. If they're these smart masterminds that are trying to get off, but they didn't find out about it because of investigation. They found out about because they told it. They had been telling it separately. They had been telling it to different people since they was 8 years old. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just saying this now during the trial. They had been telling people. They had been telling counselors and therapists. They have been telling people. It wasn't oh, this just came out. They had been telling people. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm just telling this story for the sake of getting off in this case. They were telling people already since the first one was when he was 8, when Eric was 8. So it wasn't like it would make sense if this just came out or they kept that to themselves. Like they both are working together to win this case. I don't see why they would tell that Lyle was molesting Eric. I don't see the purpose of that. Like, what's the purpose of telling that if you're trying to blame your parents? Because that brings in an element of maybe you are the one who was convincing Eric. That you get what I'm saying? It brings in a whole other element to the situation that if they're these masterminds, they wouldn't bring that into the case. But that was the reality. And so they're telling you the truth because they're telling you all the details of what was going on. And then the fact that they had told other people. If they hadn't told anybody else, nobody else knew, then I'd be like, man, y'all just start telling people about your dad molesting you when you kill him. how convenient. Then it would be like, it's giving weird. It's giving weird to me. But because they had already told people, and then the witnesses came and said, "Hey, yeah, they had been telling us," but we couldn't do nothing about it because the dad was powerful, rich and powerful. We couldn't really do nothing. Also, the murders was sloppy. It seemed very maniac and manic, and the police were nincompoops for sure. For sure, for sure, for sure. Also, the spree they went on definitely could just be a glimpse of how they deal with the trauma and claims of abuse. Yes, that's what they're saying now as older men. They were like, we're just kind of doing shit to keep our minds off of it because we weren't in one was in college, but he was getting out of he was leaving, he had left college because of what had happened. And so and then Eric was like, man, it just was like traumatizing, but we just kind of was just out. And then we're young adults free with this access to this money, so we're buying stuff. Yeah, it just I feel like a lot of times it was kind of like the wild, wild west, especially when you hear about stories when they were happening, and then when you get to hear about some of the nuances and details. I did a video about Lorena Bobbitt and some of the details about her story that I didn't know as a kid because people were making so much jokes about it. People were making so much jokes about, just Lorena cutting his penis off. Like, if that's all you heard about, the jokes and the comedic response to her cutting his penis off. Nobody was talking about I just read your hat. Yes. These nuts. Best in town. um um they nobody was discussing the abuse in detail and the history of abuse and the history of what was going on with her. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's quite interesting. Um of how, even the OJ Simpson affecting the trial, just how much public opinion can affect certain trials. And that was an interesting aspect of it too, where I was like, oh, so half the time this shit don't be just at all. Which makes it super, super wild for me. And then case like this, the privilege of it being in California, the privilege of it being based in Beverly Hills. What is going on with Netflix and them adding games to your membership? But yeah, this is just one of those moments where I'm getting more details about the case. I just didn't know that the nuance was as deep as it was, especially around the prosecutors and the judge. Children are so vulnerable and an unprotected class. Mm. Why is Ryan Murphy obsessed with these bizarre cases that don't necessarily paint gay people in a good light? What is he trying to tell society with putting attention on these stories? Hmm. Give me other examples. What other stories? Mm-hmm. What else? Because that's only two out of his work. What else? Any more? Okay. I think that what he is doing is because if you think about it, it's not just is there's much of his work when you think about feud like with um what is her name? What the two women name? Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. He does feud. I think what he does, he takes stories and just adds details that were erased when the stories was going on. Like when we think about prior to this era of time, when we think about Jeffrey Dahmer, we don't think about Jeffrey Dahmer's victims being gay black people. We just think about Dahmer just being a serial killer. They didn't tell you that he was targeting queer black people or queer minority people, mostly black. A lot of times back in the day when people were telling stories, the queer part of the story was left out. What I love about Ryan Murphy is that he uses his access to share the queer part of the story. But these were high profile cases. I think who is going to do it if not a queer white man with the power to do it? Because nobody has done Dahmer in the way that Ryan Murphy did. Ryan Murphy, nobody showed. I have never seen a documentary that talked about that talked about Dahmer that showcases the black girl, the black woman who lived in an apartment complex that was constantly pushing the police to check him out, check him out, check him out, check him out. Nobody, I didn't learn about her until probably a year before the Ryan Murphy Dahmer series. And when I learned about her, I didn't, it was almost not, it was still played little. Nobody was saying that she called on him multiple times. They were only talking about it when the Laotian boy, the Lao boy, was caught, and she called the police, and then they gave the little boy back to Dahmer. They only showed her in that part. They didn't check. They never told until Ryan Murphy gave the details of it. They never showed that she had been constantly telling them something is going on with this dude, and y'all are not paying attention. Who is gonna do that? Unless it's a queer person. I feel like that's what Ryan thinks his job is. His job is to point out these nuances in these cases. I think when he goes to his to his team and say what I want to create, I think he goes, that's what he does. I didn't think Pose was dark at all. Well, not at all. I think it had some moments of reality, but I didn't find Pose to be dark. But yeah, I'm thinking just Ryan Murphy's body of work. There's some pieces that don't even, like, it's always gonna have queer elements. Like when we think about Hollywood, when we think about, I don't know what that movie was called, where it was set in basically they were having a birthday party. It was set either in the 70s, and they couldn't basically they were having like a gay gathering. I don't know what it was called, but it was a play. It was a queer play, a groundbreaking queer play that he made into a movie. Yeah, I don't find that to be dark. I found that to be the reality. That was the reality. That's what happened. That's Dorian Corey had a dead body in a trunk in her apartment. That's literally what happened. That wasn't dark. That was real. It's dark, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's not made up. It's what really happened. Dark in the sense that it's like, oh damn, you had a dead body in your closet, but that was real. But why wasn't that necessary? If the show is about sharing trans stories, and this is your opportunity to share a trans story, that is a classic trans story. Like that is a legendary trans story. Dorian Corey having a dead body in a trunk, that is a legendary, like I had been heard about that. That was a legendary trans story. Like why, if I'm creating a movie, if I'm creating a show, why wouldn't I add these elements? Like, I don't know. Why would you not? That's the spice of a show. Like, that's how you, I don't know. That's how you make a show interesting, by adding real. We all knew that these were going to be real life elements intertwined into the story based on real life people. If you leave out all the dark parts, what's the point? What's the point of it? That's necessary to me. Those are the elements that feels necessary to me. And they talked about trans people being killed all the time. The time the trans lady makes it out alive and avoid jail time is a very necessary part of the story. I don't know. I think you know what I'm saying. I think when you're writing a fictional story that is based on real life events, you get to choose what stories you want to tell. And so I feel like the story with Angel and falling in love with her client, that's something that needed to be told. I feel like Angel doing the modeling stuff to reflect her being um exposed like Tracy Africa did, and um the drug abuse and drug selling, and the candy dying. I feel like all of these are nuanced. The relationship between Electra and her mother, I don't think is perfect, but I don't think any show is going to be perfect. But I think you need those kind of real stories. Yeah. But also, even that, Jay, a drag queen and a trans woman in this era, there was some nuance and overlap. I know some drag queens who they would call themselves drag queens, but they went around their world as women, never getting up out of drag in this era of time, 70s and 80s. I think we have gotten in a little bit more detail in the definitions of certain things because we are coming out of the shadows, but people within that nuance of experience existed during that time. And so there's some people who, but even people now, like Ty, my sister Ty, she's a drag queen, but she's a trans woman. Like she does drag as her career, but she also lives her day-to-day life as a trans woman. So I knew people back in the day that was like that. There was a time when your drag mother could be a butch queen, or could be, like a Pepper LaBeija. My gay mom's mom was Muffet out of St. Louis, and she was just an older. I wouldn't say she was a trans woman, but very much almost. Yeah. Hey, well, I don't know. I think that uh, I think that I think that when you are in a position where you have enough power to create queer stories, there is a pool for you to do the positive good fantasy and the negative bad reality of the world. And there has to be a balance between the two. And nothing is going to be perfect. Nobody and everybody's going to have their opinion about where that balance should lie. But and I say that about Pose specifically. I love Pose, but there is some, you know, it is one show. It's not going to be able to encapsulate every single trans story that that it can. So that's why we need more stories. Um yeah, that's why we need more stories, more people telling stories, and more nuanced. Um was the Menendez parents trans? How does this relate? Yeah, we're not talking. We have went on to talk about Ryan Murphy and his choices in his storytelling. We're not talking about the Menendez parents anymore. It has nothing to do with trans. It has more to do with um it has nothing to do with the Menendez brothers. It's more to do just we're having a queer discussion about queer content and queer creation. And the theme now has switched to Ryan Murphy and his choices in his offerings in Elizabeth brought up how some of the things that he is creating, don't necessarily shine a good light, which is true. Some things shine a bad light, but some things shine a good light. Like there's some really like Hollywood was a positive one. I can't remember what the hell this movie is called. It was really, really good. Something about boys. Ryan Murphy film set in the 70s. Like a feud. He did two feuds. He did the feud with Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, but he also did the feud with the Swans and and Capote, because Capote was queer, which I think is dope. Running with Scissors, Ryan Murphy did that, but that's not what I'm talking about. Let me go to his filmography. So yeah, he done a bunch of stuff that was not negative. The Boys in the Band, that's what I'm talking about. The Boys in the Band. Have y'all heard of that? The Boys in the Band. This was really, really good. I loved it. I love the first few. Yeah. Mm. Now, if y'all want to drag somebody who shows the LGBT in a negative light, let me introduce you to the one and only Tyler Perry. So I don't know. I feel like I think that's a great critique, but I mean, he's playing to his audience. His older who's before millennials? Is it Gen X or Gen who was before millennials? Is that Gen X? Yeah, Gen X. I mean, Gen X, they love that, that's their vibe. That's their vibe, honey. They love a woman cheating on her husband, getting AIDS. They love he's working towards his audience. That's the people who support him. So yeah. I just feel like He's giving what he knows is gonna resonate. Yeah, there are some he's gonna give you a Down Low Brother, a JL King. He's gonna punish the women for doing bad things. He's gonna give you a colorism. He's gonna give you he's gonna give you a uninvolved black experience. An unevolved black experience. He's gonna give you all of that. All the stuff that we were worried about in the 90s. Struggle, love. Yes, he's gonna give you all of that. Now I'm curious to see Billy Porter portray James Baldwin. I am not watching that bullshit. I am not watching that bullshit. He just I'm not a Billy Porter fan in regards to him and how he moves in the world. I just don't like it. Shit that he say, shit that he do. It just doesn't feel James Baldwin-esque. And I don't know who it would be that I would want to do it, but I don't want to see it. What I'm waiting for is this Luther Vandross documentary that's coming out. I wanted to go see it at Sundance, but they putting it on HBO soon. Oh no. Billy Porter on Pose, he was the actor. Um Michaela Michaela J. Rodriguez, MJ Rodriguez, she kind of stepped up in a couple of seasons further down. I think season 3 she really did good. But the actor who was giving me the best acting was Billy. Billy was was carrying that show on his back in regards to acting. I think the person who got the bad rap on her acting was Dominique Jackson, was Electra. But I think the reason why she got negative backlash on her acting is because the character that she was playing is like this kind of larger than life. When she's playing, if you put somebody, if you meet Dominique Jackson like as a person, you will understand who Electra is in her. She literally is acting her ass off by portraying a character like Crystal LaBeija. So that voice and that acting is a character actress, but it seems fake because that acting is the way Crystal and people like Krista act is a performance. And so when you see somebody put that performance on, it can kind of feel like, oh, this is fake. Why is she talking like that? Like it's bad acting, but you got to know Dominique Jackson to know that this is not how she acts in real life. So she's putting on a character and it's actually good, but if you don't know the nuance of that, you would think it's bad acting. I definitely didn't like India Moore's acting. Um I enjoyed Angelica Ross. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the best either, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed yeah, Billy was the knockout actor to me in that. There was moments where Angelica did fire. There was moments where Poppy did fire. There was moments where Michaela did fire. Yeah, it was moments. But I just think Pose in my memory seemed rushed off air. I agree. I think so too. I think there was other stories that could have been told. But I'm a trans person, so I'm gonna always want more. I'm gonna always want more. Um, yeah, I still call James Vanderbeek Mother Dawson Creek after listening to your Pose recap. I loved my Pose recap. I wish I hadn't lost the last season. We recorded all of them, but they the last 4 episodes, I lost the files, and I don't know how I did that. I really don't know. I don't know how they got deleted. Cause I sure wanted to use them because I paid my co-host every for his time every time. I feel like it got to grow. It just didn't get to grow a lot. I think 3 seasons is cute. Not enough, but 3 seasons. I feel like we got enough stories. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not a. I don't have a affinity for happy endings. I think some endings are happy, and that's like some endings are bad. That's real life. I never have a. I'm more. I'm more. I like you to tell real stories, happy ones, sad ones, tragic ones, joyous one, whatever. I want you. Long as it's a real story, realistic, I'm okay with it. It doesn't always need to end happy. Yeah, my pose recaps. I tried to make my pose recaps. I would because the crux of the story was the relationship between, to me, between Preytel and Blanca, and it felt like a love letter. Of course, trans is a central part. Trans experience and the queer experience is a central part. Of queer black man experience is a part of the story, but the relationship between Blanca and Preytel is at the heart of the story. And so for me, it was important for me to bring a butch queen on to talk about the show each time we did. So I just brought a different butch queen each season. And so Brandon lived with me at the time. And then Brian um was looking to get into podcasting. So I said, "Oh, well, do if you want to practice before you start yours, come on in and do a pose hosting with me." And then I did the one with Tim because Tim, you know, is because Tim status. Tim got diagnosed and was willing to talk about it. And so that's what we were going to talk about because it was such a central part of Pray Tell story. And so we went into it more in depth. And I hate that I lost the files. Season 3, the rush rush finale. Mm. What I wanted, I didn't want more than 4, actually, if I'm to be honest. I think they needed 4. I think that because of the time period, they already gave us late 80s, early 90s. Season 2, you're getting that kind of early 90s, and then we're going into the mid 90s, mid late 90s. I would have loved, because that is when the AIDS epidemic changed. That is when it started to shift. People weren't dying crazy. And so 95, 96, there was always a musical theme. Like, Madonna had her little era in season 2. I would love them to have like a Janet Jackson era. As far as the music, I think, yeah, I would have loved to go into the mid to late 90s. And I felt like they could have done that in 4 seasons. Yeah. But yeah, I just think we need more. But I also felt like it was right now, Ryan Murphy particularly, I feel like the nuance of queer storytelling is kind of going in a downturn. Hey, Darcel, is going in a downturn because we are a minority group, queer people. There's like this uptick that happens, and then it's a downturn. Uptick and downturn. I think we are in a downturn because of politically. People are getting burnt out with the trans story. It's becoming this battle, this battle, and this kind of really galvanizing topic. I think it needs to die down and then not go away, but the sensationalism needs to die down and for give people room to see our humanity and meet more trans people. That's all diversity. There is a pushback against DEI. You're totally right. It is. It was Nip Tuck. What was Nip Tuck? People, y'all keep bringing up Nip Tuck. What is Nip Tuck? I know what Nip Tuck is, but why y'all keep bringing it up? Just because it's Ryan Murphy? What about Nip Tuck? There's always going to be when there is a uptick in liberation. Ryan Murphy show that had highest quality. It did even have beginning of trans stories. Uh, mm, mm, mm. Okay. I don't know, but it depends on your criteria of quality. um, yeah, that's what I was thinking, Andre. But it just depends on what your criteria of quality is. And it was Fonka. She wasn't even trans playing a trans woman. So I don't know. It felt I don't know, it felt kind of exploitative to me. But it still was a story. I don't think it's all necessarily bad. I feel like that about um I feel even like about Jerry Springer. I feel like Jerry Springer had his place. I think it was great? No. But for me as a young teen, seeing trans people on Jerry Springer at least was affirming. It may not have been the most classy, upstanding stories being told. But at least I know I'm not alone out in this motherfucker. There's other trans people out here. I remember shows on ABC, Revenge. It was a queer storyline in that. Then season 2, they made him straight. Empire tried to tone down the Jesse gay line stories too. Yeah, it's always been stories. I remember you go back to the damn Jeffersons. It was a trans story, a trans episode on the Jeffersons in the 70s. It's always been kind of sprinkled into little stuff because the sensationalism. But yeah, I think it's all a drop in the bucket to normalcy. And I think anytime we have an uptick in advancement, there's a backlash that hits us. There's a backlash that hits us. Brandon, what do you mean by what am I watching? What am I watching right now or what am I watching in general? Um, is that what you mean? I said it was wrong. The trans stories were smaller parts of the series, but what was the gay movie that came out about gay white guy and people acted like it was the best thing? Oh, I don't know. In general, I am watching The Ring of Power. I just finished the finale of The Ring of Power. I am watching Penguin. I'm really enjoying Penguin. I really enjoying that. It's the new um, Batman themed series on HBO Max. Penguin. I am watching. What else am I watching? Let me. Um. Oh, what's the new one with um Penguin is so good, isn't it good? It's so good. Um Grotescus Grotesquia or Grotesque something with Niecy Nash. Grotesque. Let me see what it's something grotesque or something. Grotesque grotesquerie. Yes, grotesquerie. I like that. That is really, really good. Um I really like that. Where did you see the Menendez documentary? On Netflix. Um, yes, I really enjoyed that. Let me see what is on Prime Video. Let's see. I'm ready for Wheel of Time to come back. Um, yes, Ring of Power. Oh, you know what else is good? I've been watching this movie called it won an Oscar. It's called Women Talking. Man, I'm not gonna even talk about it now because I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna do a whole live about it. It's called Women Talking. It won an Oscar, but I had never watched it because it was white women. And so because it was white women, I was like, oh, this is what this got to do with me. Um, Wheel of Time was more intense than Rings to me. Yes. Yes. I enjoyed Wheel of Time more than I enjoyed the first season of Ring of Power, but I really enjoyed this last season of Ring of Power. I really enjoyed season 2. Season 1 was good too, but not as good as season 2. And um I'm excited that they are building it up. Season 2 has gone good. I watch Lord of the Rings. I watch Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and The Matrix about twice a year. Just go through all of them. Those are like, I love those movies. I like the Galadriel character in The Ring of Power. I like, yes, she's always been my favorite main character, even when Kate Blanchett played her when she was the Queen of the Woods. Um, I really like Disa, the black dwarf lady. I really like Disa. I really like Gandalf. We now know that it's Gandalf. People was making it seem like it wasn't Gandalf. I really like Gandalf. Um, um, I like that the pretty eyed black elf. Um, I like him too. But yeah, standout characters is Disa. I actually like Sauron. I like the actor who plays Sauron. I really like them. Um who else? Um Celebrimbor actor was good. He was. Because Gandalf is not supposed to be there, according to the Tolkien stories. Ring of Power is taking liberties with the timeline of Tolkien stories. Mm-hmm. But they know they can't do fucking they can't do a Lord of the Rings series without Gandalf. Y'all need to figure it out. Bring Gandalf in. Gandalf is the character. But I'm glad they took that liberty. I knew it was Gandalf. Like I knew in the first season, I was like, it gotta be Gandalf. When they were trying to make it seem like he was Sauron, I was like, no, that gotta be Gandalf. What else? What else am I watching? But yes, make sure y'all watch The Stranger, right? Yes, that's Gandalf. What do you do when you're done all you can? Seems like you can't make it through.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would terrorize
I'm rewatching
young girls.
Ted Bundy's tapes. Do y'all watch Yellow Jacket? I did. I ain't finished it, so I don't have too much to say about it. But Yellow Jackets and The Perfect Couple seems dope. What other ones have I been watching? You know what I need to finish watching that I haven't finished watching?
So,
Ooh. Ooh, they done added some stuff on here. I haven't finished watching The Midwives. Do y'all watch that? The Midwives? Token was kind of racist in life. I can. You know what? I'm glad you said that, Elizabeth. Most of the writers that we're gonna be celebrating now is gonna be from back in those eras is gonna be racist. But what I wanted to add was I can't help but notice. I know that they are trying to be more diverse in the Ring of Power. I know they are trying to be more diverse. But my issue with that is it's very, very like obvious that y'all are trying to be more diverse, which I'm glad that y'all are. But all like think about like the Harfoots. all these fucking black ass Harfoots. And then when we get to this is supposed to be thousands of years before Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Rings, the first one. When you go forward and we see the Harfoots are like pre the Shire, all these black Harfoots. And then when we get to the Shire, ain't no black hobbits, ain't no black people in the Shire. Where did all the black Shire folks go? Because these are supposed to be the pre-Shire people, the people who end up going to the Shire, the Harfoots. And it's a bunch of diversity in the Harfoots. How y'all get nothing but white freaking Shire folk? And the same thing with the rest of the world. We got a whole black queen in Nimendor. You got a whole black queen. Where is the black people? Once we get to Fellowship of the Rings, once we get to Fellowship of the Rings and the Two Towers and the da-da-da, it doesn't make sense. All the black people die, all the black dwarfs die. Like you got Disa married to Durin, and she ain't got no black kids. Ain't no black people coming down the line. You got a whole queen. Disa about to be the queen. Ain't no black dwarves. It's nothing but white dwarves. When we get to the Hobbit, when we get to the Hobbit and they're telling Bilbo Baggins' story, it's nothing but white dwarves. But they were like those people. Do you see what I'm saying? They have the long hairy feet. Do you see what I'm saying? There's enough diversity to where you know that these are the ancestors of the Shire folks. They have the same, they're little with hairy ass, long ass feet. So why is it nothing but white people in the Shire? That gets real weird to me. It doesn't make sense. I understand they're trying to be more diverse, but y'all should have been doing that before. Lovecraft Country was so good. I enjoyed Lovecraft Country. Yeah, it's so weird. But yeah, what else am I watching? Yeah, so make sure y'all watch The Women Are Talking, because I'm going to talk about that. I was so mad when they ended Underground. Diamond, what was the name of the website where you watch your shows and movies on? Hold on. It's called lookmovie2.2. I think that's the I don't know if that did that work. I'm trying to put it in there. It's called Look Movie the number 2 dot to that. Yeah. I think that worked. Yeah, here we go. I think this will work. I tried to watch Underground and I couldn't get once she got in the once they burned the girl in the house and then she got in the train or something about a train, like an actual train. I don't know. It got kind of weird. I stopped watching it after that. I don't want to say it got weird. It just got I just wasn't in the mood to deal with the trauma of it. Um, I don't know. I kind of wonder if things shouldn't be made to a creator intent or when they allow to change. I mean, when you buy the rights, when the people who own it give you the rights to do it, I mean, you kind of give up the freedom. That's one thing, but also I don't know. I'm okay with if it makes sense, it makes sense. I don't know. I'm okay with making changes if it makes sense, but I'm also okay with making political changes too. Yeah, I don't know. I don't I think we're talking about two different undergrounds. Ain't there two different undergrounds? Ain't there one with Journey Smollett and then another one with the dude who's in the new Netflix movie, the light skinned dude with the funny color eyes? Ain't it two undergrounds? I didn't watch the one with Journey Smollett. I watched the other one with the are we talking? Because I know it was two things called Underground that came out with Aaron. Was it Pierre Aaron or Aaron Pierre? There was two at the same time. Two shows called Underground. Yeah, I didn't watch the one with Journey Smollett and uh Aldous. Is that how you say his name? I didn't watch that. I watched the one with Aaron Pierre. Oh yeah, I've never watched that one. I didn't get to any of them. I was in a mode where I was like, "Oh my god, I'm over the slavery stuff. I'm over the trauma of slavery." That's for the white people who need to learn about the horrors of slavery. Uh, mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I want some. I want them to make the profit because I want to hear some queer. I don't know if this is weird. It might be weird, but I want to hear some queer slavery stories. Where's Ryan Murphy? You need to make us some queer slavery stories. I'm joking. I do not want Ryan Murphy to make any queer slavery stories. But I need some queer slavery stories and that don't involve buck breaking. I don't not that's not what I'm talking about. Cause where was the gays? We know the trans was there. What was the gays given in antebellum South? I would rather no. I won't want Ava to do nothing. I don't want Ryan to do nothing. Who would I want to tell a story? A queer black man. Oh, Ian Polk. What's his name? The one that do Noah's Ark. The one who do P Valley. I wouldn't mind him. I like his stuff. I like his queer stuff. Um, who else? Anybody but Lena Waithe, honey. I don't want Lena Waithe. Um, yeah, or somebody just new. Ryan Coogler. I don't want no straight niggas. No, I want it to be somebody queer. Is Barry Jenkins queer? Because I really loved Moonlight. So maybe Barry Jenkins. I don't want Lena to do nothing, child. Mm-mm. No. I haven't really. Once she disappointed me with Queen and Slim, I was like, sweetie, I'm off of you. And I never really got into the Shy like that. So Ryan Murphy might be behind the show. Kindred on Prime. I didn't get into it. I don't really like. I don't feel that's the story that of Octavia Butler that they should have started with. They should have started with either. I think people think they should have started with like Parable of the Sower, but I think what would have been fire is if they would have started with Wild Seed. They would have started with Octavia Butler's Wild Seed. That's a story. That's a story. Wild Seed. They should have. That is one of the ones that they sleep on with Octavia Butler. I feel like that has the science fiction element that we used to and we make that we should make. What happened to Janet Mock? I don't know. She's got her Netflix deal and started doing directorial stuff and behind the scenes stuff, and she's getting her life behind the scenes. I know she had that little falling out with Murphy, but she was supposed to have a Netflix deal. She did have a Netflix deal, and she's been doing stuff, but just nothing that everything that she does hasn't been revolving around trans. Like she's done with Ryan Murphy, like she did some episodes of Hollywood. She did directorial episodes of different things behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Where is the love? Where is the love? Where is the love? I don't think Barry Jenkins is a friend of Dorothy's. Oh, okay, I wasn't for sure. I thought he was, but I wasn't for sure. Could be not. But all right, he's down with the puss. So no, not him. I wanted somebody queer. I don't want Lee Daniels now. Lee Daniels ain't far from Tyler Perry. He more elevated, but not far. I don't want to hear nothing about no Jacksons. Not me. I need somebody to make some of Elin Harris's books to be real into some series. I want them to make Southern, is it Southern Discomfort or Southern Comfort? That needs to be a movie. No, that's not. Is it Southern Discomfort? I don't know. Southern Discomfort by Rita Mae Brown. This book right here, if I ever get some coins and can make a book into a into a movie, that's not like something I want to do by my own life. If I got to work on somebody else's work, this is the book that I would make. This is the movie that I would make. So good. So good, so good, so good, so good. So many plot twists. Rita Mae Brown, Southern Comfort. Southern Discomfort. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Look at my little room. Oh shit! I just read. I got these art paintings that I just hung up in my room, and I got this antique, old school lamp from the '70s. It reminds me of a '70s massage parlor. Y'all see it? That lamp right there. Isn't that cute? And then these artworks that says people over systems, integrity over popularity, and mortality over legality. Morality over legality. And then I love us. So fire. I love that little thing. That little it's like purple, like it's just a pretty ass purple. I found it at a vintage shop. Looks like yeah, it looks like an old nasty 70s. And then I got this little record player, little cute little record player. Yeah. And of course the classic record, Songs in the Key of Life. There's a couple of records in there. Me starting a vinyl collection. Do you need speakers for a record player? No, the speakers are built into it. But it's also Bluetooth ready, so I can put it on my surround speakers. I'm redecorating my room. It looks a mess now, but I have a bunch of shit. I want all my walls to have art on all parts of the walls, like not just like one art piece. So I'm collecting art. So I have this, you see, I have this big art piece in the middle that is surrounded by LED lights. And so I want to have that only be the one that's surrounded by the LED, but I want to get this. This is a 6'8" statue, and that man is carrying that frame that's light. So I wanted to look like I have this art piece that is surrounded by the light, but he is taking the light to somewhere else, if that makes sense. In my room, so it looks like he's taking the frame to another artwork. And so I'm gonna have another piece of art like right here, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain, but this is an actual statue that's like 6'8". So fire. And so that's gonna be the theme of my room is gonna be like colorful art, and all the furniture in the room is black. And yeah, that's the vision I have. But that's an actual 6'8" lamp. So I'm excited. All right, so what do y'all want to talk about? Thumbs up if you're here. No. When does the hurricane make landfall? When does Hurricane Milton make landfall? Like right now? Ooh. Like 5 hours ago? I thought it was supposed to hit at 1. Oh, it hit at 8:30. Oh, but it was only a category 3. Oh, they said it only was a category 3. That ain't, I don't want to say it's not, can be devastating, but category 3 ain't that bad. Yeah, it's big, but they was making it seem like it's gonna be 4 or 5, honey. Yeah, last time I looked, they was making it seem like it was gonna be 4 or 5 hitting land and da da da. Mm. Oh, it looks like it's kind of dissipating from the live. Okay. Pretty Fly Dress says the government's telling taxpayers to evacuate and not giving them money to evacuate is wild. Meanwhile, we're sending trillions to Ukraine. Yes, I agree with you, but also I want to make it very clear that there are certain pots of money that Congress controls. Congress controls the pots of money of what it can go to, and boistering the pot of money that is um thing was okay. A lot of the money Republicans controlled stopped a lot of the money that was going into the pots that was for FEMA. They didn't want to give the allocation of that money. They didn't want to boost it up. So, but you're right. Money does kind of get switched around, and if we got enough for wars, we should have. We got enough to give Israel. We got enough to give Ukraine. We should have enough to give our people. You're totally right. Yeah. But this is also why I feel like investment in those kind of like in those Asian countries, investment in those kind of like super fast railways. I feel like we should have been already doing that shit. We should have been already investing in those railways so people can. I feel like it lessen the burden of people who do want to evacuate. It's not only good for the economy, but it's also good for. Do you know how what like if because we was here in Texas, we're supposed to get a railway that goes from um that goes from Houston to kind of like in this little place in the middle of Houston and Dallas to Dallas, and it's supposed to take short amount of time. Railway, less than an hour. Do you know how, in regards to job market, how it will open up the doors for somebody to live in Houston and work in Dallas? If I can get to Dallas in an hour, I could take a job in Dallas for inexpensive because you can catch a flight in less than an hour, but it's expensive. But if I could catch a flight, catch a train, like a commuter train, oh no, good luck. Yes, be safe. Candles, 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 candles. Is it hot? I know it's fucking hot as hell. U.S. is too big to have a robust high-speed rail system. You are totally correct. I feel like that should be so like duh. It will help with evacuation measures. We know that y'all don't believe in fucking climate change, so we know that this climate shit is gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. Shit like this is warnings, and y'all not invested in that shit. They've been talking about creating that train from Houston to Dallas for almost a decade now, more than a decade. Hmm. We're gonna start in 2025. You said that 10 years ago. Ain't shit started. But it will help with evacuation efforts. We don't want to spend money. They don't want to spend money on the bridge in Baltimore for the port. Ain't that crazy? The port supposed thousands of jobs in the East Coast. Crazy. Money hoarding. Money hoarding. But we can go support genocides. That's crazy. It's crazy. Bought up by Republicans and closed by Republicans. Come bring me your softness. Comfort me through all this madness. Woman, don't you know with you I'm born again. Oh, come give me your sweetness. Darling, with you there is no weakness. Lying safe within your arms, I'm born again. I was half my whole instead with none. Reaching through this world in need of one. Come show me your kindness. In your arms, I know I'll find this. Darling, don't you know with you I'm born again? I hope port workers know them companies are still going to try to use AI to automate some of their jobs in the future. Well, at least they'll get the money until then. I feel like that's what we all need to be on. Multiple industries, not just the ports. Multiple industries need to say, yo, we done with this bullshit. There's too much price gouging. It's just too much greed going on. And we learned from COVID that when the world stops and the money stops, they can start making changes. But as long as we keep going along the day as usual, they don't stop shit. And it have to be masses. It can't be no down. Baby, 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 baby. Baby, 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 baby. Baby, 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 baby. Baby, 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 baby. Oh, so fine, so fine, so fine. I heard some of those hotel housing, the people evacuating from Florida started price gouging. Yes, the airline started price gouging. The hotel started price gouging. Went for charging $100 a night to $607 a night. Yes, that should be illegal. Yes, the number of jobs work from home when you were told prior to COVID, that's not possible. Amen. Yep. Some of the parking lots of hotels are going to start charging people just to park there. Shade. It is illegal. Yeah, but you got to, if it can be illegal, but if they're not enforcing it, then is it illegal? Technically, sure. But if you're not enforcing it, all of a sudden it's possible. And they made that they mad they rent this big building to have offices. Trying to convince us to go back to work. There's a hotline to report businesses. I remember during Harvey. So luckily for me, every time a hurricane hits Houston, the ancestors have put me in a situation where I was good. Either I was traveling already or something was going on. Yeah, most of the time I'm traveling already. Like the travel plans had already been made, not for the hurricane, but for something else. So the one that was the most scariest was Harvey, but I had an event in Seattle. So I went to Seattle, but I couldn't come back. I couldn't come back to Houston because it was still going on. So have a great day. Um, but we were trying to get I was trying to get a hotel in Seattle, but the way the prices was jacked up, it was really, really hard. And so, but also what I didn't know is that they didn't have air conditioning in Seattle. So I'm like, it is hot as hell, and y'all ain't got no air conditioning. And y'all wanted me to pay these prices? No, thank you. So I ended up calling my only rich friend and saying, telling him I am stuck and I need to get to somewhere where I can afford some hotels. And instead of them flying me to Houston, because they couldn't fly me to Houston, I told them to fly me to LA, and he bought me a hotel for a week. Then, but it worked out for me because he bought the hotel. He gave me the money for the hotel, but my job paid for the hotel. So I actually doubled up on it because I got the money from him, but my job reimbursed me for the cost of the hotel. So a week later, they opened the airline back up, and I was able to fly back to Houston. And luckily for me, none of my area don't ever flood. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, shatatalaboshah. Word out. Grateful. And so I came back home to power and no flooding, and everything was all good. Harvey was crazy. It was my welcome to Houston. my my first hurricane in Houston was Ike. Same thing happened. I had surgery in Tijuana. So I went down to Tijuana, and I was in California for the whole week and came back. Now, a lot of the city didn't have power, but we did. My apartment, the other buildings, other apartments and other buildings didn't have power, but our apartment did have power. And because they used to be shady to us because we were trans, it was funny because now only the trans girls, because it was me and Ty staying in that apartment, and only the trans girls got power, and y'all was wearing the trans girls out. I don't want to say like wearing us out like being violent, but honey, they would be telling people our tea or saying a little smart shit or whatever. But we the only ones with power, and luckily we wasn't evil. We let them bring they extension cords so they can like use their hot plates and shit just to be neighborly and friendly and not to hold any grudges. But it worked out for us because from that point on, everybody in the place loved us. But I remember the whole city. I remember being dick hungry. I remember driving and picking up Jamarcus because that's when I had started talking to Jamarcus, the boy that I had on the channel one time during Christmas when we was together. Um, I remember picking up Jamarcus because he didn't have no lights, and I had to drive down. See, I lived at the time in Greenspoint, which is the hood. But he lived in the hood too. He lived in South Park, but it's different sides of town. I'm in Greenspoint, so that's on the north side, and he in South Park, which is on south side. Um, so baby, honey, I drive down the highway, baby. When we get to his side of town, baby, even the highway don't got lights, which is I had never experienced. I was like, what is going on? Even the highway don't got lights. And so I'm driving through the neighborhood, honey. trying to get to his house to pick him up, and picked his ass up, and we come back to my house, and he stayed with me for like, because we have lights, he stayed with me for like 4 days. And we have a good time, baby. A good loving time, honey. Super, super fun. It was good. This was good. Good times, good times. That was the first one, and then there was one in between Ike and Harvey. Was it Rita? I can't remember. But I wasn't here for that one either. And then this recent one, I was out of town. Whatever the recent one. And then that Texas freeze happened. That was the one that affected me the most. That was the when the lights were out and it was cold for a week. Like, it was crazy because it snowed for like a couple of days. It was wild. That was the one. That was the T. Well, all right, y'all. I'm about to get up off of here and finish getting my house together. It is 3:10. I am not sleepy. I woke up at 7 p.m., baby. I'm not going to sleep no time soon. But all right, y'all. I will talk to y'all Friday. Bye bye.